navigate the changing workplace to build a culture that empowers all employees to produce great work. Join our September webinar as Christina, OC Tanner's global data researcher, shares insights about the differences within our organizations today and the one thing that empowers employees around the globe to produce great work. Organizations and teams that know how to manage the chaos and change in today's HR world are on secret. Appreciation is the key to increasing feelings of well-being, trust, and empowering great work. Attend the webinar to learn more about how to address the challenges of an increasingly diverse workforce, why recognition done right is crucial to inspiring great teams and great work, the latest insights on the workplace trends of 2016 that will transform your onboarding, well-being, and recognition practices. Let me now introduce to you the speaker for this webinar. We have the privilege of having with us Christina, Manager Research Services, OC Tanner. As OC Tanner's Manager of Global Research and Assessment, Christina has led global focus groups and research projects across 20 countries and helps clients measure the impact of their global recognition programs. She loves seeing the impact of recognition on employees, leaders, and organizations. Christina has been with OC Tanner for 8 years and has previously worked in market research for IRI Worldwide, Memorial Hermann Hospital System, and Anheuser-Busch. She has a bachelor's in sociology from the University of Michigan and master's in marketing from the Northwestern University. Our partner for today's webinar is OC Tanner. OC Tanner, Global Reward and Recognition Company, featured on 2016 Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For list, helps organizations create great work environments by inspiring and appreciating great work. Thousands of clients globally use the company's cloud-based technology, strategy and design services, mobile application, awards, employee communication, and education services to engage talent, increase performance, drive goals, and create experiences that fuel the human spirit. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those attending the live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have a very exciting agenda for the webinar today, so without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the webinar microphone to Christina. Over to you, Christina.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. I know the topic of workplace issues and changes in the HR world is covered by many different organizations and conferences and webinars and magazines. And I want to thank you today for joining us to hear about the research that we've done and the insights that we've heard. So let me start by just describing a day of a typical HR leader. He or she may start the day in an early morning meeting about the company's benefits policy to make sure it's meeting current laws. Then she may talk to her senior leadership team about whether or not to let employees use different apps on their personal phones for work purposes and what the IT and security implications are. She goes back to her desk to find an exasperated manager who is a baby boomer and frustrated working with his team of millennials. And after counseling him, she checks her email to find a message from the CEO asking her what her department's strategy is for 2017 in the war for good talent. She breaks to grab a quick sandwich for lunch, gobbles it down, and sees another message from a vice president who is not sure how to motivate and inspire his team because they all work remotely. She then stays late into the evening because it's morning in the U.S., and she needs to make a presentation to managers about the new learning management tool that the company is rolling out. Finally, checking her email one last time before bed, she finds a confidential email to the entire executive team, informing them of impending layoffs and leadership changes. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Well, the one thing you can always count on in the business world is that change is always happening. There's changing laws and regulations from outside of your organization. There's new technology that's always coming out, from social sites to new work apps, and the gamification of everything, and a big emphasis on big data. There's the constant competition for good talent, the battle between the generations, and the constant question of how to integrate a more global virtual workforce. And on top of that, there are always the usual business changes, mergers and acquisitions, financial changes, changes in leadership, etc. In fact, 32% of HR professionals see managing change as the biggest challenge in HR for 2016, for this year, specifically culture and leadership changes. And unfortunately, for HR leaders, often what you are focusing on and what your CEOs want you to focus on can differ. We conducted a study last year of 100 HR leaders and CEOs to see what their expectations of HR professionals was. And we found a gap exists between what CEOs feel HR leaders should be spending their time on and what HR leaders report that they actually are spending their time on. These gaps exist due to different priorities within the company and a lack of resources. At the same time, HR has also been tasked with things like increasing innovation, changing the workplace culture, and creating a collaborative work environment. So how do you navigate through all the changes and all the demands to build a culture that empowers all employees to produce great work? The reality is that our workforce is becoming increasingly diverse. Change is always a present force. Company leaders are demanding more and more from their people. The role of HR and people leaders has never been so important. So how do you navigate that? Well, you may think that you need different programs, maybe different vendors, different consultants to help you manage different situations in the workplace. Maybe you think it's complex, it requires a lot of resources, time, people, strategies. Well, you'll be happy to know that there's one overarching tool, strategy, action that you can take to engage and empower employees no matter what situation you find yourself in, and that is meaningful appreciation. I'm going to talk to you today about how to use recognition to inspire great work from your people, no matter if they are offline, online, virtual, no matter what generation that they're in, no matter what changes you're facing in your organization or what changes are happening outside the HR world. Let's spend a few moments to talk about the importance of recognition first, and then I'll talk to you about how we can use recognition to navigate those different changes. So this chart shows that simply by having a recognition program at your organization, you can influence whether or not people stay. The top chart shows an average number of years an employee stays at their organization, but just by simply having a service award program. Employees stay at a company for 6.7 years when there's a service award program in place, compared to employees who only stay 4.7 years with a company without a service award program. The same is true of companies with performance programs. Employees stay an average of 13.3 years at companies with performance awards, recognizing above and beyond work and achievements and incentives. Compared to employees who work at companies without that type of recognition, they only stay 9.8 years. In fact, a global survey of 200,000 job seekers around the world asked employees to choose the most important attributes in a new job from a list of 26. And the number one attribute that they saw show up was appreciation for my work. This was followed by things like good relationships with colleagues, good work-life balance, good relationships with superiors, and something like attractive salary, which we all assume is what's most important to employees, that came in at number 8. So employers who are looking to attract and retain and engage top talent really should use appreciation, as that is the one thing that employees are looking for. We also know that recognition improves engagement. Employees are more engaged when they receive strong recognition, and actually it's a rate of 2 to 1. So 78% of employees who have strong recognition or feel strong recognition at their organization are highly engaged, compared to only 34% of employees who experience weak recognition that are highly engaged. The same thing happens with people who experience recognition and how they feel about drive and determination at their organization, how much connection they feel with their organization. If you have strong appreciation, you're able to engage your people faster and better. We also know that recognition in our research is more effective at encouraging people to be innovative and productive than even a 5% salary bonus. So if you think about things that you spend in your company, bonuses, raises, money, cash things that you're giving to your employees, it all costs a lot of money. Recognition does not cost a lot of money, and it actually is more effective, according to employees, at causing them to be innovative and productive. We also see in our research that employees who receive strong recognition are 33% more likely to be proactively innovating, and they generate 2 times as many ideas per month as employees who don't receive strong recognition. And recognition can help with manager attributes. Organizations who have managers that struggle with things like building trust or communicating with their employees or setting goals actually can use appreciation to improve those areas. More employees feel engaged with their managers when they receive strong recognition, even if their manager isn't great at trust, communication, or goal setting. We also know that recognition has an impact on employee well-being. Well-being is one of those new trends in the HR world that's being talked about. And companies all over the globe are talking about not just how to engage employees, but also to improve their overall sense of well-being. We know that when companies recognize employees for their career achievements over time, it increases their sense that the company cares about them, and it increases the sense that they fit and belong in that organization. So employees that have years of service program at their organization feel a higher sense of well-being that the company cares. And then finally, recognition builds teams. Employees who receive strong recognition have a better relationship with their direct manager as well as their peers compared to employees that don't receive strong recognition at their organization. So I share this with you because I want you to see the power that recognition has on things like engagement and company connection, innovation, productivity, building teams, building managers at your organization. In the end, when it comes down to it, we are all the same. So no matter where you are in the world, what generation you're born into, what industry you work in, what kind of job you have, everyone wants to be appreciated. And you may be wondering, yes, appreciation is great, but how do I show appreciation to my people? How do I recognize them in a meaningful way, especially in such a complex and changing work environment? Well, the key is to pay attention to nuances. So let's dive into some of those nuances, and let's start with that multi-generational workforce. So there's an increasing number of generations that are starting to work together in the workforce. There's a lot of talk about millennials out there. Millennials are things that organizations are focusing on right now. Millennials are about to be the majority of the workforce. Baby boomers are retiring. Gen Z is starting to show up in the workforce. How do you satisfy, engage, and inspire millennials? How do you replace the talent and skills of those retiring baby boomers? I'm sure you're starting to have these very same conversations in your organizations. But why do we care? Why is there so much chatter and worry about different generations? Well, it's because for the first time in history, we've had 4 generations all working together in the workforce. Again, millennials make up 50% of the workforce by 2020. Gen Z will start coming in. And you still have boomers and Generation Xers that are in the workplace. And we're all working together. And I don't think we should focus solely on millennials. I think we need to focus on the fact that we have 4 generations working together. How do we get people to work together? How do we motivate all of these different generations? Well, let's start with engagement. How do you engage different generations? Well, in our research, what we found is that, again, we are all the same. Whether you're a millennial or a boomer, you want the sense of opportunity for development in your organization and the sense that management cares about your well-being. That's the number 1 driver of engagement worldwide. But the number 2 driver changes depending on if you're a millennial or a boomer or a Gen Xer. Millennials are really wanting to be held accountable for their work, meaning poor performers at the organization are held accountable, and also good performers are recognized and noticed, and their work is appreciated. For the older generations, Gen Xers and boomers, it's about building trust. They want to feel like the company trusts them and they trust their organization. The last driver of engagement in all of these areas is pride in the organization's symbol. Both younger and older employees want to feel connected to their company, connected to what the company stands for and the brand. But again, for those younger employees, that sense of accountability is really important. And for the older employees, building that trust is really important. Work motivators. Also, again, the top motivator for all employees, no matter what age you are, is doing exciting, challenging work. That doesn't change whether you're starting in your career or you've been in your career for 40 years. What's different, though, is when you go down the line at the next set of work motivators. For younger employees, it's really important that they're working with a successful organization with a strong future. They want to feel confident in your organization. They want to feel like they have a future there. Also, things like regular promotions up a defined career ladder and receiving formal recognition from my company for my work effort is important to them. They want to see promotions. They want to see a career path, and they want recognition. Millennial employees need recognition. Older employees are motivated by doing work with a lot of variety, working primarily on their own, being autonomous, feeling like the company trusts them, going back to the drivers of engagement, and also working with a successful organization with a strong future. But it's not just about engaging and motivating employees, it's also about causing employees to do great work. Because you can have engaged employees, but if they don't do great work, it doesn't impact the company. So what causes great work? And how is that different for each of the generations? Well, we asked in an open-ended study where we asked employees to just, in a comments box, write in what is the number one thing that would cause them to do great work? What is the top thing their company or organization could do to cause them to do great work? And by great work, we mean work that is productive, innovative, and makes a difference that people care about. So you'll see for this millennial generation, ages 25 to 35, the top thing that would cause great work is recognition. 41% said recognize me, appreciate me, value me, notice my work. 14% said pay me more, and 14% said inspire me. So millennials often get this bad rap that they only want money, or they only want promotions, or they don't want to stay with an organization. And what we found is that, yes, money is important to them, but they also want to be inspired, and they want to be valued. For the next generation, Generation X, ages 35 to 44, recognition was still the top choice there, but it was also about giving them autonomy. They want to be able to go out and do great work on their own and not feel like they're being micromanaged. And as you go up to the generation after that, the older Gen Xers and the boomers, recognition was still the top choice, but less important, 36% here. And what became more important for the boomers was to be left alone. They were self-motivated. Again, they wanted the company to trust them, to give them the autonomy to be able to go out and do great work on their own. There are also nuances when it comes to recognizing employees of different generations. Younger employees, for example, want recognition that is not expected or regular. That's more personal, that's more genuine, that's not done just because it's their turn or to check a box. They want recognition to be unique to them. They want to be valued in a unique way. So it's not going to be meaningful to younger millennials to stand up and be recognized in front of an audience with 200 other people that are recognized on stage with them, with a generic thank you message, and to get the same award that everyone else gets in the organization. They want more unique, customized recognition. They want recognition that highlights their accomplishments, that shows the impact they've made in the organization. And again, they want customized awards. They don't want recognition awards that everyone else is getting. Older employees, however, want recognition that is fair. They want recognition that is based on performance, that's given for a reason. They don't want to just be recognized because it's their turn or because everyone else is being recognized. It definitely has to be based on above and beyond performance. And for older employees, award expectations are higher. They want more of that formal recognition moment. They want more of those symbolic type awards. They like those presentations where they stand up in front of 200 people along with their coworkers at a banquet and be recognized for an achievement that they've done. And that is important to them, and that's very meaningful to them. So there are nuances when it comes to using recognition to impact that multi-generational workforce. We talk about celebrating career achievements over time. There's nuances when it comes to doing that for millennials versus older employees as well. Younger employees really want a more casual and party-like environment. They want more opportunities to socialize. For younger employees, they're happy to get away from the work location. Whether you have a casual lunch to recognize them, you have a social event at work, but they don't necessarily need the formal recognition that older employees are comfortable with. Older employees want that more formal corporate presentation. Older employees also want family involvement. It's important to them, if they've been with a company for 30 or 40 years, to be able to have their family included in that celebration. Older employees also want higher management participation. They really respect and value senior leaders being part of their recognition moment. For younger millennials, they also value senior leaders being part of the recognition experience. However, they're sensitive to presentations that aren't personal, that aren't customized, that aren't unique to them. So if you have a CEO coming down to recognize a millennial employee and that CEO doesn't know anything about what that employee has done, it is not as meaningful to them to receive that type of recognition. Next, we'll talk about a global workforce, because one of the biggest HR challenges, aside from a multi-generational workforce, is a global workforce. The world is increasingly becoming more globalized. Organizations are now scattered all over the world in different locations, dealing with different cultures and employees with different preferences. So how do you engage? How do you inspire a global workforce? Despite what you think about different cultures in different countries, again, employees all over the world are the same. We all want to be recognized and appreciated for our work. So whether you're in China and you want more than just an annual recognition during the best of banquets, or you want to hear from your manager in Germany more often because right now you're not getting any type of feedback, or in Mexico you want to celebrate a big accomplishment with all of your coworkers, or maybe in Australia it's more of a reserved team type of recognition. Or maybe you're working with Americans and they love recognition and they want people to shout about it from the rooftops. Everyone wants to be recognized. And again, the nuances are how you do it, how you recognize people in different countries with different cultures and different backgrounds. So we know from our research that we've done that there are 5 main best practices when it comes to global recognition. And the nuances come in how you apply those best practices. So for countries like in Europe, like UK, France, Germany, it's really important to have alignment. They want to make sure recognition is given fairly for above and beyond performance, that the criteria is always clear, and that you're not just doing your job, but you've actually gone above and beyond. That's important to them. Whereas in China, leadership involvement is actually very important. So alignment not as important, leadership involvement more important, as well as meaningful awards. They want awards that are not cheap, that are valuable and highly curated and meaningful to them. Because so many things are created in China, they don't want awards that they can just buy at the factory down the street. They want awards that are special to them. In the U.S., symbolism is really important. Americans really are about brand and logos and connection to their company. And so when you give them recognition, it's important to include the company symbol on that recognition moment. And for Mexico and Brazil, it's important that recognition is meaningful and presented in a meaningful way. They love big celebrations. The whole team shares in that recognition and rejoices with each other. And so there's different nuances that you have to keep in mind when you're applying recognition to your global audience. In the same way as that there's nuances as you apply recognition to different generations. One thing to keep in mind is how to unite a global workforce. So even if it's not about recognition, even if you're trying to implement some sort of people strategy, whether it be a learning and development solution, or it be performance management, or even a new benefits package, or new software that you're trying to get people to adopt, there's best practices that you need to keep in mind to be able to do that successfully. One is to have an aligned strategy. You need to make sure that all of your countries are on the same page, that they're all participating in the same way. You need to incorporate local involvement. A lot of what we hear from local HR leaders is that corporate headquarters will roll something out and not even include the local locations in the design or implementation of that program. You need to understand those cultural nuances, again, knowing what's important to the employees in each of these countries, and give every area access to tools. You need to make sure that all of your locations, whether they have 100 employees or 2 employees, are able to access the tools and programs that they need. And you want to communicate and check in often. A lot of times we hear companies roll out different types of programs that 4 or 5 different countries or 10 different locations, and then you never hear from them again. They want to be communicated to. They want to hear about updates. They want you to check in with them to make sure that everything that you're rolling out is successful and working well. Next, I'll move on to a virtual workforce. So another aspect not only of the globalization of the workforce is a virtual workforce. A lot of employees now are starting to work from home or different locations. In the U.S., a big trend is to work from coffee shop or shared office space on the road. And this is something that I think is coming in a lot of different areas. And so we want to know, how do you engage and inspire people that don't even work in the same location as you, that don't have coworkers and peers around them, that may be working at home by themselves? How do you engage that type of workforce? These are just stats from the U.S. workforce, and I have these on here because it was easy for me to find. However, I feel like the rest of the world is either catching up to these stats or actually ahead of these statistics. So 50% of the U.S. workforce currently holds a job that could be done virtually. So half of the workforce could work from home if they wanted to. 20 to 25% of the workforce teleworks at some frequency. So whether it's once a week, once a month, multiple times a week, they're working remotely at some capacity. And we have 3.7 million employees that now work from home at least half of the time. So again, virtual workforce is something that's growing and will continue to grow. So some best practices when it comes to communicating with your virtual workforce. Again, this applies to recognition, but it could also apply to any other sort of communication that you want to do in your organization. It's even more crucial to recognize and appreciate virtual employees because they are so isolated from their peers. They're not part of all the activities in an office. They don't go out to lunch with their peers. They don't socialize in the morning. They don't celebrate birthdays in the office if you're working at home by yourself. So leverage recognition to be able to include them, build that team, sense of collaboration, and communicate with them. There's different tools that you can use when you want to engage your virtual employees. Whether you want to recognize them or communicate with them, be sure to include them, whether it be conference calls, messenger tools that you might have at your organization, in-person presentations while you're traveling to different locations, and also be sure to include peers. Again, because these employees are on their own and kind of isolated from their peers, it's really important that when you recognize them, their peers are there to observe and hear about that recognition moment and also be part of it. We had a great example at OC Tanner of doing recognition moments through instant messenger. And this works if you have employees in different time zones or employees in locations where it's hard for them to take a conference call. We have an instant messenger tool where we actually had a whole team gather around at a specific time and submit recognition moments and recognition accolades to this individual for his 10 years of service at his organization. And it was a great way for them to gather together, even if they couldn't be in the same room, and talk about this employee, what he has accomplished, what projects he's worked on, stories that they've had with this individual, fun things that they know about him, and really create a recognition moment even if they couldn't all be in the office. So again, as you're communicating with your virtual workforce, it's important to use all the tools that you have available and be sure to include your peers. Another big HR challenge and obstacle is major company changes. And this is something that's going to be unique to every individual company. It's something that you often aren't able to foresee. You're not able to predict that these things happen. It could be anything from mergers and acquisitions to downsizing, executive changes, financial woes. For these major company changes, communication is key because it's very disruptive, and it's probably one of the hardest challenges. It's not a challenge that is a trend out there. It's a challenge that exists within your own organization. So showing appreciation through the hard times is really important. Employees feel a lot of uncertainty during a merger and acquisition or a downsizing or executive changes. Will they lose their job in the merger? Who's going to be their new boss? Will they still have all of their benefits? Will they stay the same? Will existing clients recognize their new brand? And how do they identify with a new company? We had a client that did an engagement survey with us, We actually conducted their engagement survey. They had just had a merger and acquisition of several different companies. It was a financial company that bought out a lot of other financial companies. And after the rebranding, we did this engagement survey. And what we found was that there were very low scores around engagement and trust. Employees spoke very negatively about the company. They were afraid about losing their jobs. They didn't trust their peers. It was just a very, very negative environment. So we helped them with a recognition solution that banded them together, aligned around a message and a mission that everyone could rally around, and that really resonated with employees no matter what company they came from. They recognized great work that was happening during the time of uncertainty. The company also put a lot of effort into better communication with their employees and manager training. There was a recognition solution that also incorporated more communication and manager training. And 9 months after they started that recognition journey, we did another engagement survey to measure how things were going. And what we found was that the company had double-digit increases in every single area of the survey. Engagement went up 30%. Recognition satisfaction went up 61%. Pride in the organization went up almost 30%. We noticed in the comments employees started to feel calmer. They started to settle better with the new company and the new brand. They started to worry less about their jobs and more about how they were going to do great work. And they started speaking more positively about the company. Appreciation could be a very powerful tool during times of uncertainty. It helps employees to feel like they're making a difference even if things are changing. It reinforces the importance of people. It can help people feel like they're in good standing with their managers and with the company when maybe they don't feel like they are. It can inspire them when they feel overwhelmed or overworked in times of huge change. So leveraging communication, appreciation, as well as communication and training is really crucial when you're trying to navigate a major company change. So my last example is going to be offline versus online population. This is not necessarily a new HR challenge. It's been around for some time. We've always had people that had access to computers and tools, and people that don't have access and work primarily on the factory floor or assembly line. But it's an HR challenge that still exists and is not going to go away. Despite all of the advances in technology and new software and new tools that are out, you're always going to have an offline population in some environments. If you're manufacturing, oil and gas, retail, all of these types of industries will always have offline populations. So how do we navigate a population that's both offline and online? Well, again, communication is key. Being able to find communication vehicles that work both for your online and offline population. Making sure that offline tools are available. Often we forget, we send emails out to people, and we forget that the offline population often doesn't have access to email or to a computer. Make time in a daily meeting or daily team huddle to show appreciation. Again, a lot of times companies embark on a recognition solution that uses a website or email to recognize people, and that doesn't touch your offline population. If you have drivers in your organization that aren't at the organization's corporate office and that don't have a computer, they often don't get recognized. So to make sure to take some time in team meetings or weekly meetings to recognize your people that are offline. And also leverage the mobile tools they already are using. So even though drivers and manufacturing employees may not have a computer, they definitely have phones. And a new HR trend right now is for employees to use personal phones for company business. So even if it's not a phone that your company has paid for or they're not on your corporate plan, oftentimes employees are still using their phones to communicate with each other, to get work done, to take notes, and to send email. So leverage those tools. They're already using them in their day-to-day work life. You're able to use those if you want to communicate and appreciate them. I want to share an example. We work with a lot of companies that have large offline populations. And what we find is that companies that put in both offline and online solutions are more successful. And you can really leverage, again, changes in technology to help reach your offline population. So I want to share an example. This is a case study with PepsiCo, and I'm sure you're all familiar with PepsiCo. They also own brands like Gatorade, Frito-Lay, and a bunch of other brands. But PepsiCo has been working with us for many, many years now, and they are a large offline population. They also struggle with all of the other HR issues that I mentioned in today's webinar. They have a multi-generational workforce. They have drivers who have been there and who are older and boomers, but they also have millennial employees that are coming in and starting to work at PepsiCo. They have virtual employees, remote employees located all over the globe. And they also have recently gone through a major company change. So the challenge for Pepsi was to design an employee brand that would still meet individual needs, but also creating a centralized platform to bring everyone together. So PepsiCo, a few years ago, had just bought a Frito-Lay, Gatorade, and Pepsi Beverages Company, which is a little bit different than PepsiCo, as well as Tropicana. So they had a huge merger with 4 different companies into this one new company called PepsiCo. That was a huge change for them. It obviously impacted a lot of employees around the globe. And their senior director of human capital management communications said, we knew we needed to come up with something that would work for everyone. So again, the challenge, multi-generational workforce, large offline population, multiple locations and types of employees, and a merger and rebranding. So PepsiCo created a flexible solution. They used both online and offline tools like manager reward checkbooks for those people on their floors and for drivers, but an online website for people with access to email. Employees were able to recognize each other through those tools, either giving out those checks from the checkbooks with reward codes or submitting recognition through a website nomination. They had quick and spontaneous recognition tools and moments available for millennials who like that genuine, spontaneous recognition. But they also had more formal recognition for their older generations. We created a shadow box for them with collectible branded magnetic buttons. So every time they got a button for their years of service, they could put it in the shadow box and display it at their desk. That was really appealing to those older employees. We had awards that appealed to all generations, from iPads for the millennial employees and experiences and vouchers for them, to watches and home goods and jewelry for the older employees. They also had customized symbolic trophies for each of the different business units and cultures. So they knew what was important to each of the different business units, but also all of their global locations. They targeted communications to leaders, and they had manager training to help managers understand the best practices when it comes to recognizing different types of employees, whether it be millennials, virtual employees, or employees in different countries. And they also were able to take into account local customs and cultures, but bring it under one umbrella. So it was flexible and customized, but it was still centralized for them. Here are some results. So in 2014, PepsiCo reported over $66 billion in revenue. They had over $1 billion in annual sales generated by their brands. They are a global company, and in their first half of 2015, they had over 102,000 recognition moments. So it meant that there were over 102,000 times that employees were recognized for above and beyond work, and that equates to about 568 recognition moments every single day. Some other impacts on their culture. So we do their survey, their employee survey, and what we saw was that employees who gave recognition, not even employees who received it, but employees who gave recognition, 97% indicated they saw an improvement in performance after the employee received their award. So not only was recognition a way to say thank you, but people that gave recognition actually saw employees doing more work, doing better work after they've been recognized. 97% of managers also indicated that they were highly motivated to contribute to the success of the organization. So managers were engaged. 86% of employees said they were inspired to do great work after they received recognition. Again, so it's not just about engagement, it's about doing great work. 87% have a strong desire to stay with the company 1 year from now, and 89% of managers said that the program improves company culture. So that's the recognition that that's making a difference at their organization. It's improving culture. It's improving engagement. It's getting employees to do more great work. And it was able to unite a diverse workforce where they face challenges across the board, but we're able to unite all of those employees and bring them, again, under one umbrella. Here's a quote from their Senior Director of Human Resources. Our investment in recognition is paying dividends. You see it in things like reduced turnover and better retention numbers. You see it in terms of productivity and business performance. You see it in how people feel about coming to PepsiCo every day, which fuels a desire to leverage the tools even further. So they tied it back to business results at their organization, and they saw it so successful that it makes them want to use it more and more. So I want to end really quickly here with just 4 things to remember. Again, I went through a lot of information. There's a lot of data, a lot of charts. But what I want you to walk away from this webinar with is 4 things that you want to remember. Don't forget about recognition. A sincere, simple thank you builds collaboration. It calms storms. It inspires and motivates people. Understand the changing workforce and the needs of people at your organization. Don't forget about your virtual population. Don't forget about your offline population. Understand all the different generations and countries that employees are in your organization. Appreciate all the differences and utilize each employee's unique talent. So rather than focusing on differences between generations, complaining about millennial employees or people that work from home, think about the positive qualities and the unique values and skills that each of these types of people bring. Leverage your millennials' knowledge of technology. Leverage your baby boomers' great experience and collaboration. Appreciate those differences. Send a thank you note or an email to coworkers that might see differently from you. Again, one of the biggest challenges in HR today is a diverse work population. But that diversity also brings new ideas and collaboration and makes companies better. So honor each individual's contributions to the team and to the work. Number 2, communicate in a way that makes sense to your population and is aligned to your company's mission, vision, and goals. Remember that email may not work great for your offline population, but a personal announcement in a team meeting might be better. A stand-up meeting doesn't work for virtual employees because they're not there, so don't forget to call them afterwards. Tie employee accomplishments back to aligned goals. Why is it important to the company? Why is it important to your team or to your customers? Emphasize behaviors and accomplishments that align back to what's important to your company. And don't leave anyone else. Don't forget the small team that you have in Brazil or Japan or the 2 employees that are on the road all the time. Make sure to include everyone. So I just want to end with a couple of quotes. One is from the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at Northern Trust. It's human nature to want to be valued, to have recognition that's user-friendly, that's dynamic, that's fun, that's instantaneous. It kind of copies all the right people, so you don't have to toot your own horn. It sort of transcended any kind of business or cultural boundary. Recognition goes across cultures, across different types of employees. And then a last quote by Maya Angelou, who is a world-renowned author. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Appreciation makes people feel great about where they work. It brings people together. It fosters collaboration. It engages, motivates, and inspires great work. So don't forget appreciation when you're trying to navigate company changes or navigate some of the tough time in the HR world. It's a powerful, simple tool that you guys can use to bring your whole company together. And with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you again for listening in. I apologize. I am a little sick today, and so my voice didn't make it through the whole webinar in its fine form, but hopefully you were able to hear some examples and hear some best practices and tips that will help you leverage recognition at your organization. And I think we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Christina, for such an excellent piece of information. We have some questions lined up for you from the participants. Here's one from Mr. Shekhar. How to make employee recognition very consistent?
That is a great question, especially because I talked about a lot of the nuances and how to recognize different generations or in different countries. The way to make it consistent is to make sure, again, you have an aligned strategy across all of your locations or all of your business units. Something companies struggle with right now is that they do different types of recognition in different areas. One manager might be doing one type of recognition, another manager might be doing another type of recognition. One business unit might have one program, another business unit has nothing at all. So what we recommend to our clients is to have one aligned corporate strategy where all of your employees have access to the same tools. They're using the same program, they have the same tools, they're being given the same best practices when it comes to recognition. So you don't have one business unit doing one thing and another business unit doing another. They're using the exact same recognition program. You still have to allow for flexibility, as some areas might be able to, some areas might have a virtual workforce and they can't do in-person presentations, and other areas have an offline population. So you know that you have some flexibility there. But again, as long as you're connecting it all to the same program with the same values, emphasizing the same behaviors, and communicating the same way, you can have more of a consistent recognition program.
Thanks, Christina. We have another one from the same person. How to encourage co-worker-employee recognition in the workplace?
So I guess to clarify, I'm assuming you're talking about peer-to-peer recognition in the workplace, or how to encourage people to recognize each other. Recognition is something that comes very natural to people. Employees want to say thank you, and they're probably already saying thank you to each other. And again, managers are already doing recognition. They're just doing it in ways that maybe you don't notice or you're not seeing. A lot of companies have recognition moments happening all the time, but it's not being tracked. It's not being observed. A lot of recognition is not public. And so what we would encourage companies to do, again, is to leverage recognition tools that allow for peer-to-peer recognition and also allow for recognition to be public, so other coworkers can see the great work that people are doing, and other coworkers can see their peers being recognized.
Right. I totally agree on what you said. We have one from Mr. Dhruv. What would be the skill set demanded of HR professionals to manage the changing workplace structure?
Oh, that's a great question, excellent question. We actually did this webinar once in the U.S., and no one ever asked that question, so I like that. I think some of the skills that HR leaders really need, the top skill right now is to be strategic. So if you think about the evolution of HR used to be about benefits and compensation, and then it was about processes and payroll and, changing laws and that kind of thing. And so it was always very tactical. You always had to know certain pieces of information. But right now, I think HR is becoming more strategic. So you really have to think about how to connect all of your people together, how to connect, and how to engage them. It's not about making sure that employees are getting along well or they're able to be onboarded well. It's now about how to engage, motivate, and inspire them. So being strategic and being able to connect the dots and make sure that what you're doing at your organization is having an impact on engagement and culture and attracting and retaining talent. I also think HR individuals need to be well informed to be able to go out and see what other people are doing, what other companies are doing, and to be able to copy those best practices. So going out there and being connected to your local SHRM or to Workforce Magazine or any other HR conferences that you might attend or blogs that you read or magazines to subscribe to. I think it's really important to keep informed of the newest best practices and newest trends. And then I think the last thing is flexibility. I think you guys know in your roles as HR leaders that you're constantly putting out fires. You're constantly switching gears and doing 500 things in one day. And your days are never planned out because you never know what's going to happen that day. I think being able to be flexible and to react to different changes in the workplace, whether that's a merger and acquisition or that's getting new technology in place, I think being able to be flexible and to move quickly is really important.
Thanks, Christina. I'm sure everyone would agree to that. Here's one from Rahul. How is the rewards and recognition space going to evolve to impact employee engagement in the coming years?
Can you repeat that question again? How is rewards and recognition going to impact engagement?
Sure. I will repeat that for you. How is the rewards and recognition space going to evolve and impact the employee engagement in the coming years?
That's another great question. So rewards and recognition space is also constantly evolving, just like the HR world is constantly changing and evolving. And I think right now there's a great Aon study. I think you guys are familiar with Aon. They're a global HR consulting company. There's a great Aon study that talks about recognition no longer being something that companies use to differentiate themselves when they're attracting talent and engaging talent. It's something that's expected. So employees expect to be recognized now. It's not a nice to have. It's almost a necessity in your workplace, in your organization. And so I think rewards and recognition are going to play an increasingly crucial part of engaging employees, because they're not going to be engaged if they don't feel valued and they don't feel appreciated. So it's not going to just be annual bonuses or once-a-year Christmas parties that will make employees feel appreciated. They're going to want that ongoing day-to-day recognition. And I think recognition is going to be a huge part of engagement. It already is in most of the organizations and in the industry, but it's going to be a huge part of how you engage your employees on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much, Christina. We have another one from Shweta. How do we design the recognition practices based on the kind of industries and the type of employment, say permanent or contract?
Sure. So recognition strategies don't have to be very different by the different industries. Again, we know from our research that all employees like to be recognized and appreciated. So really, whether you're a financial organization or you're a healthcare organization or you're an oil and gas or retail, manufacturing, employees want to be recognized, and you can use the same tool to recognize them. Everyone wants thank you notes. Everyone wants to be recognized in front of their peers. Everyone wants public presentations. So that type of solution, I don't think needs to change a lot. I think what's probably different by industry is what you're recognizing. What's important to a financial organization might be different than healthcare, might be different than retail. And in retail environment, customer satisfaction, customer service is important. You're probably going to use your recognition program to recognize customer satisfaction and customer service. Whereas in financial organizations, it may be more about sales or financial metrics. So you'll probably tie your recognition program maybe to more of those types of metrics. So the behaviors you recognize and the values that you want to instill are going to be a little bit different by industry. But the tools you use don't necessarily have to be different. You do have to keep in mind a retail environment will have more offline population, so you want offline tools, whereas a financial organization probably has everyone on computers.
Thank you so much for answering that, Christina. Here's one from Yogesh. What would you say are the key changes in the talent demands of the new age workforce? Are HR professionals equipped to make the most of the situation?
That's a great question. I think HR is getting there. So in the changing workforce, especially as we move to more technology, more remote employees, more flexible work environments. That's another thing that I didn't talk about in detail today, but it's a big thing, flexible work arrangements. So not always working 9 to 5 every day, but being able to work at night or work on the weekends or, work 4 days a week. That's a big deal. With some of these changes, I think, again, the key is to be flexible. For HR leaders to be able to anticipate the needs of these different employees and anticipate the changes that are coming and be flexible. The biggest challenge HR leaders are going to have is convincing the CEO and other leaders at the organization to make changes. We see that all the time. HR wants to do recognition, but the CEO doesn't believe in it. HR wants to, have a flexible work environment. The CEO doesn't believe in that. And so that's going to be your biggest challenge. I think HR professionals can be equipped, again, if they're informed with what the trends are and what the best practices are, but they're also strategic and tying it back to what's important. Something like recognition or something like a flexible work environment isn't just a perk. It actually ties back to engagement. It ties back to productivity and innovation. And if you can convince your senior leaders of that connection, it'll make you much more successful.
Thanks, Christina. We have the last question from Sandeep. How to design an effective reward and recognition program when there is a constraint of budget?
That's a great question. We actually just did an Aon study, again, a joint study with Aon globally that talked about the importance of sustaining recognition best practices, and budget was the number one thing that came up as an obstacle to recognition. Again, recognition doesn't have to be expensive. You can use a lot of no-cost, low-cost solutions, thank you cards, buttons, e-cards, that kind of thing. One thing that you can do, and I would emphasize that all of you do this as you're thinking about recognition solutions, is to calculate whatever issue you're struggling with, whether that be engagement, employee retention, innovation, productivity. Calculate what is it costing your organization to lose employees? What does it cost them when employees aren't engaged? If you calculate for every 1% of turnover that you have in your organization costs you $3 million, putting in a $100,000 recognition program suddenly doesn't seem so expensive. If you figured out that low engagement is costing, or low customer satisfaction is costing your organization $70 million a year, putting in a $1 million recognition program is not going to seem as difficult anymore. So as you struggle with budget, just be sure to figure out what you're trying to improve and how recognition can get you a huge ROI on what you're trying to improve.
Thank you so much, Christina, for answering that. As there's a time constraint, we'll have to take the other questions offline. With this, we'll wrap up today's question and answer session and today's webinar itself. Once again, we'd like to thank today's webinar partner, O.C. Tanner. Also, a special thanks to our speaker, Christina, for this webinar and indispensable information that she has shared with us today. And I'd like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for being so patient and for participating in today's presentation. We will come back to you with many more such interesting sessions. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a good day.